Hello everyone, I'm Johan from Economia, your destination for financial independence, tips to invest and spend wisely. Are you wealthy? Good question, right? Did you know there are several stages of wealth? No? Let's talk about them. Let's discover what they mean if you are on one of those stages, and more importantly, how you climb the wealth ladder. Sounds interesting? Keep watching. But first, please click the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It would help us a lot. Let's get started. Let's start with the basics. What's wealth? The dictionary says it's an abundance of resources or money. It's not bad, but for us here, when you talk about finance, a better definition would be it's the sum of all your assets, things you own, minus the sum of all your liabilities, things you owe, money you owe, or anything you owe. And the total is your net assets or wealth. And this is valid at a given time because it changes over time as you accumulate more assets or more debts, and the total would change. And of course, this would be depending on where you live as well, your gender, etc. And your wealth is relative. Why? Because it's in comparison to people around you, comparison to others. You are wealthy compared to someone else or another population. It's very difficult to make comparisons, but we can look at comparison by country. There's actually something called the Global Wealth Book. Yes, that's a thing. It's compiled by the bank called Credit Suisse, and they have the 2021. I'm linking to it below if you want to look at the details, but here are a few examples, country by country. Let's start with France. You'll see here the data for median, which is $133,559, and the average, which is $299,355. So remember, the average is the total of all the wealth divided by population. So a very wealthy country with a small population have a bigger average, whereas the median is actually the point where you have half of the population that's below and half of the population that's above. And that's actually a better way to look at wealth or revenue or household income, because it gives you really where people stand. Let's continue. Then you have the US, where you see the median is actually lower than France, but the average is higher, wealthier country, more bigger economy. Japan is actually a bit below in terms of both category, right? Whether you look at the median or the average. Singapore has a relatively low median, but has quite a high average, a lot of rich people and a small population. And finally, just for comparison, Malaysia is much below. So, as you can see here, really depending on the economy, the strength of a given economy, and the population, this can be very variable. So it's difficult to make comparison country to country. You have to put countries in the same group that have the same size economy or the same size population to have an actual comparison. Within a country, if we take a country, it's going to be depending where you live. If you live in a big city, in a financial center, you may have more assets because maybe your house is valuable, more valuable, for example. But also, it's unfortunately by gender, male and female don't have the same wealth. Whether you're married or single is going to be dependent. It's a very complex way of measuring, but it's also an interesting one when you know all of these details to know where you stand from a financial standpoint. Interested? Let's continue. What are stages of wealth? That's what we're going to discuss now before we look at how you climb the ladder of those stages. So this idea of level of wealth or stages of wealth came to me through a newsletter and a website that I read regularly. It's out of Singapore and it's called Investment Modes by someone called Keith Eng. I link it below. I encourage you to check it out. There is a lot of very good information there, very regularly on personal finance and investment. So basically, what Investment Modes tells us is that there are 11 stages of wealth. And the way they're calculated is based on your assets minus your expenses, how much is left. And that determines, right, your level or your stage of wealth. Let's go into details very quickly before we go into how you climb, as I mentioned before. The first stage is stage 0, which is called dependence. What this means is that your assets that will not cover your liabilities or expenses. You are dependent on friends or family to make ends meet. You can't balance your budget. Your expenses are bigger than your income. That's a tough situation to be in, but when you start your life, maybe that's what's happening. Maybe your family is helping you and you're living with your parents, or maybe some friends' house and you're sharing. That's how it works. Let's go to stage 1, which is called financial solvency. What it means is your basic assets or income cover your expenses. You just cover. You're breaking even, so you're not dependent on anyone anymore. It's a pretty good stage. It's a good start for everyone. You balance your budget and you cover your expenses. Stage number 2 is financial stability. What it means is that you've built up an emergency fund. Emergency fund, for those of you who have followed a lot or maybe are researching a bit financial matters, means that you've put money aside for 3 to 6 months in case your main income, I may not say it, were to disappear. It helps you if you're getting sick, gets unfortunately fired, or if you have to help a loved one. This is your cushion, if you want. 3 to 6 months is what people say. Other people go for 9 months or a year even. Step number 3 is debt freedom. It means you've paid all your debt. And there, it's interesting at investment modes, what they're saying, those are the high interest debt. Credit card debt, consumer debt, good debt, like a reasonable mortgage on your house or maybe on your car if you need a car, is there, but you can cover the payment. Stage 4, it starts being interesting. There, thanks to your assets, you have accumulated the equivalent of 1 year of current expenses. So that's, when we say current expenses, those are your basic survival expenses, food, a roof above your head, and your expense, and your medical expense if you have, and maybe if you have children, tuition fees, I would say. And you have your regular expenses, go out, maybe subscription, a bit of entertainment, etc., etc. So that's cover your expenses. Here we're talking about current expenses, so that's all of this together, 1 year. Okay, this is stage 4. Let's go to stage 5. This one is much more advanced. There you don't have 1 year saved. Thanks to your assets, you have 5 years worth of current expenses. That's a lot. When you arrive at 5 years worth of current expenses, it means that in case you lose your job, you have a lot of time in front of you to find a new job. Or if your current job or current occupation, it doesn't fit you anymore and you want to change, you want to train yourself, maybe change, go to a different field, you have enough money to train, go back to school. Now we are at stage 6. There, your assets are covering 10 years worth of current expenses. This is awesome. You have 10 years in front of you. What can you do with 10 years? Well, you can do everything you did in the previous stage, but also if you have children, for example, one of the partners, yourself or your partner, can decide to stop working and take care of the kids for 10 years. This is a fantastic level of freedom already. You can really see things coming. And all this money does not obviously sit just there on the bank account. You can start using this money to invest here and there. Actually, we have a video on investing that I'm linking here. You can have a look at it. And through this investment, actually starting to produce additional income. Your assets are producing income. And investment modes, calls it your cash machine. You're creating a machine where you're putting money aside in there, right? Your expenses, your assets, your assets that you're creating that cover your expenses, you invest it and it produces cash flow and covers your expenses progressively when you arrive at that stage, or even the stage before when you're at 5 years, right? So that's where we are at this stage where you have 10 years covered. We're at stage 6. Now we're at stage 7. It's called financial security. What it means is your assets are covering your current expenses. You're basically free to stop working. You've covered everything. Maybe except if you have kids that are going to college, it's a bit expensive, you need to continue working and keep building, but you're in a very, very good situation. We're almost at a fairy tale. That's what investment mode says. You're at fairy tale territory there. Now we arrive at stage 8, whereby you cover all your expenses, not just survival expenses, just all the expenses you have. Now it's stage 9. We can call it financial freedom. That's how it's called, because basically it's not only your current expenses that cover, but also a few life goals. Maybe it's traveling around the world, having several houses, you name it. You have your life goals are covered there. Stage 10 is abundance. You have abundance of cash flow that will cover more than you ever need. You don't need to worry. Your cash machine is so efficient, you have put so much money invested so well, that basically you have more than you need. How do you get through those stages? Those are very interesting. We went through all of this. This is very exciting. So we're going to discuss that. But first and foremost, again, what I'm going to talk about is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. You have to do your own research. And all of this is just for entertainment and information purpose. How do you get from 0 to 10? Well, you don't. Not in one go. Obviously, those are very big stages. The way to do it is going step by step. You go with small wins. What I'm going to talk about can be in much more detail in this video that I'm now linking here. But let's go. First and foremost, the first step, if you're at 0 or any steps before stage 4, is making a budget. Yes, this is really the basic and the magic thing, is know how much you spend every month. Know how much money you're getting. This you probably know. But how much money you spend every month. Budget is not difficult to make. You can start with a piece of paper and a pen and just write down all your expenses on one side, all your income on the other side, and make the total and see where the money is going. Of course, nowadays you can use a spreadsheet on your computer or on your phone, and there are a lot of apps that can help you do that. And you can categorize the type of expenses and really know where you stand every month. The second tip, obviously, is cutting unnecessary expenses. If you're spending too much, you're at 0, you're at stage 1, look where your money is going and look if you really need all of those. Maybe you're spending too much on, going out. It's nice to go out, but do you need to go out 4 times or 5 times a week? Maybe less is good. Maybe you can cook at home a bit. Maybe you don't need to buy a new phone every year, a very expensive phone every year. Maybe every 2 years. Maybe, talking about phone, maybe your phone bill is too expensive. Do you need that many minutes? Maybe you just need data if that's what you use mainly. Those kind of things you have to go through and really see where you're spending too much money. And tip number 3, you have to pay back your high interest loans. By that I mean any loan, any money you owe that has an interest on it, that's over 10%. Actually, if it's over 5%, it starts being expensive. This can be the credit you have for buying this new television. That was really big and looked very nice, but you didn't have the money, so you're buying it with installments. And actually, usually it's quite expensive. Maybe you use the credit card and you're not paying your credit card bills or credit card balance every month. So you're running over and you have interest paying there. And you know the interest is very expensive on a credit card. We're going over 10%, some credit cards are almost 30%. So important, always pay in full your credit card. And actually, you could get rid of your credit card and just use the debit card. You can look at this video that we did explain how you can use both intelligently. Tip number 4, emergency fund, is having a fund, money aside, that is going to help you in case you were losing your job, having a health emergency, or need to take care of someone. For any reason you have to stop and your income disappears. You have money on the side to pay for your expenses for 3 months, 6 months, maybe 9 months. In my case, it's 1 year. So you put this money aside. And this money goes on a different bank account, not your regular one. It's a bank account, maybe a savings account, and you don't touch it. Now, tip number 5. Continue doing it. Yes, that's the tip. Now that you have a budget, you have cut your unnecessary, that's a difficult one, unnecessary expenses, that you've paid off your high interest loans, and you've built your emergency fund. You keep on doing it. Keep your budget. Don't get into crazy debt. You can have your mortgage for your house, reasonable one, maybe for a car if you need one, reasonable one that you can cover easily. But don't carry a balance on credit card. Don't buy things you cannot pay cash for. Have your emergency fund ready and keep it. Then continue on doing it. The extra money from there could go into investment towards your cash flow machine we were talking about before, toward having 1 year worth of current expense. That was one of our wealth stages. Maybe progressively you built it and you go to 5 years of current expenses, and then 10 years of current expenses. You remember that's stage 6. And then as you're doing that, you're building your wealth machine, you're investing money, you're creating additional incomes through dividends or rental income. This is what you keep doing, and that's how, through those 5 tips, that you can start progressively climbing the wealth ladder. Time to sum up. Becoming rich, saving for retirement are fantastic goals that we should all aspire to, but they are far off, seem difficult to attain and difficult to be motivated by, especially if you're in your 20s or 30s. Rather, let's go with small wins and small attainable goals within the next 3-6 months, 1 year, progressively. This is exciting. This is not a sprint, this is a marathon, but this is attainable by everybody with those small tips we just discussed. That's all I had for you today. I hope you learned something. I hope it was interesting, exciting, and that gives you ideas on how to develop your wealth. If that's the case, please give us a like for the YouTube algorithm. Do not hesitate to subscribe for more content very soon. And if you have some ideas, if you have some comments or suggestions, do not hesitate to leave a comment below. Thank you again, and until next time.